You're listening to A Life Creative, real conversations with artists, designers, and other creatives about how they build, sustain, and evolve their careers.
So we're going to take a little bit of a break from our normal scheduled programming, the way we normally do our podcast, to kind of have a little touch base behind the scenes episode. So we decided to bring in a special guest today.
And today's guest is our producer, our editor, my husband. He helps us sound coherent, or
pushes Mel back from the microphone.
Yeah. Marcie also helps me sound coherent.
Keeping Mel's hands off the table.
Keep my hands off the mic. This is Christopher.
And he edits every episode.
Yeah, and this is Chris Kangas.
Hello. Happy to be on the show with you guys.
I think people may have heard your voice a few times here and there.
Yeah, you sneak in there sometimes.
Off camera, I try to get my 2 cents in. But it's great to be in front of the camera and on mic today with you two.
Well, this learning curve for you, you've taught yourself how, I think I was on a photo shoot and I came back. Marcie and you and I talked about the possibility of this podcast, and your reason for it was what? In the very beginning, you approached me.
Well, ever since I started working in the studio by myself, I feel like I kind of missed some of that kind of collaborator community that I used to have. And I go outside of it every once in a while when I have sales and different things, and you see people socially, but it's a little bit different. And I always, as you're running a business, you think God, I wish I could ask somebody certain questions sometimes. And I feel like we know some of these people. So if I had those questions, I thought other people might have questions and just want to hear people's stories. So that was kind of my initial
thought. And so we met about it. We spoke about it. You came up to visit us and we sort of hashed it out. And I remember I went on a photo shoot. I was on location. I got back, came into our apartment, and it was just filled with equipment. And Chris did the research. He found the microphones, the headphones, the audio, and figured it out. And we just started it. It was kind of incredible how quickly we set up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I had some time on my hands.
Mm-hmm. You want to tell everybody why?
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to work for years and years and years in the payments industry for MasterCard, actually, for a long time. And I left that behind to try some new things and take some calculated risks with my next chapter in my career. And so in addition to teaching cryptocurrency and blockchain at City University
as
in New York,
as an adjunct professor,
and doing some consulting in the payments industry, I decided to jump in and help you guys produce this show. Of course, I knew pretty much nothing about recording a podcast and what was required in terms of equipment, in terms of how to capture the recording in a quality way, and then edit and do all the post-production and finally get it out onto Spotify and Apple and now YouTube. So it's been a learning journey for me, but it's really what I was looking for in this chapter of my life, is learning new things and going out on the edge a little bit to try some new stuff that I hadn't done before. So this has been a really nice opportunity. A lot of frustrations, of course, especially working with
two creatives.
No, especially working on Adobe Premiere Pro. The tool is incredible. You can do so much with it, but for a beginner, it's actually quite challenging.
It's a lot of YouTube
and
how-tos.
Well, ChatGPT is my new best friend for learning how to do certain things. And but anyhow, it's been really gratifying and a lot of fun working with you two and making something nice that we can share with the world. So happy to be part of it.
And then all those little details too, we need music. And he found, we wanted to thank the music that gets played on our reels, on our show, in ads.
Yeah, well, we have Pierce McIntyre is my cousin. I'm from Minnesota, and Pierce is also in Minnesota. And his day job, he's a registered nurse, but he's long been passionate and talented musician and has recorded all of our show music, and it's been great to have to put him in the spotlight with his craft and what he's doing. So that's nice to bring our friends and relatives along the journey with us. We also have something to celebrate with our show.
Yes, Marcie, just so everyone knows, Marcie and Chris pay attention to how many people are listening, who's listening, and all those statistics. I sort of just say, how many downloads did we get today? Or, when a show launches, and you guys always know.
Yeah. So a drum roll. I don't know who wants to say it,
You say it.
You're going to say it? You want
I'll
me to
drum roll for you.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, we hit 5,000 downloads
Woohoo!
with our first 20 episodes. And it's really thanks to all of you listeners out in radio land and podcast land. And your not only your listening, but you're sharing with your friends and other people that you think might be interested in what we're doing here. So super big love to all of the people out there who are fans of the show. And thanks also for your feedback and your questions and ideas. That's been really helpful to us as we carry on with improving the show to be something that really resonates for the audience. I also want to say a quick thank you to Rowenta.
Huge thank you to
Yeah, thank you,
Rowenta.
Rowenta.
And a shout out to Ashley, who we work with over at Rowenta. A show like this depends on it eventually making some money to cover the expenses of running the show. And Rowenta has helped with that.
And our amazing guests.
Oh, that's definitely true.
Yes, last but not least, and obviously most important, are the guests. And for me, not knowing most of the people very well that have been on the show, but hearing about them through the world of Martha Stewart living and other things that Marcie and Mel have been doing, it's really super interesting and fun to finally kind of get the backstory of all these people, these amazingly talented, diverse group of people, and hearing about their life journey, especially for me as I'm moving from one chapter in my own career to some other things. To have people talk about those transitions is it gives me a lot of confidence that kind of almost anything is possible if you put your mind to it and put the effort behind it to try to make something happen. So that's been really inspiring for me.
I don't think everyone knows that a lot of our first episodes were actually here at, and this was a tongue twister on when we were recording, 10th Street House. What is it?
East 10th House Studio.
East 10th House Studios. I think I did that 10 times.
Is actually our apartment.
Is our apartment. Marcie drives from Pennsylvania in the beginning episodes to record with us. And we're going to transition also into a remote sort of recording, which opens up a lot for us. It opens up guests who live far away, that we wouldn't have a normal opportunity for them to come up to New York City.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a great opportunity. There's, Mel and I lived in Europe for 10 years, and we know a lot of creative people that we became friends with over there. And it'd be great to have people from abroad share their stories, as well as people from other parts of the United States who we also know, and include them in the show. So working with Riverside, which is a platform that records podcasts remotely, is now going to open up that opportunity for us on this show. So that's an exciting development that you can all look forward to, listeners, when you're tuning in.
Should we talk a little bit about the different, Chris, you kind of mentioned it when you were saying the listening to people's transitions, and should we talk a little bit about what's resonated for each of us in terms
Yeah,
of
I think that's a great idea. The impetus for the show obviously is to stay connected with creatives, and our guests have played out some common themes, things that really were sort of insightful or resonated for each of you. So I guess my question to both of you, maybe Marcie first, is what have you really identified with from some of the things the guests have said on our show?
It's kind of it's interesting because I feel like there were a couple different times where things were so specific to things that I was dealing with different guests that so I thought I would think about. I remember when Jeff Wallace had mentioned when he was switching to doing an art practice, he had to unlearn things, and I feel like that really resonated with me because I feel like you have a certain way of doing things for a long when you're in a job and you have a certain way of doing things and you know what that process is, and then you're doing something that's not the same but you try to implement a similar mindset to that process, doesn't necessarily work. So you almost have to unlearn and kind of let yourself go a little bit, which definitely was something that I identified with, and I think that's something other people would identify with. And then with Joelle, when she was speaking of, she has this incredibly successful knitting store and she started it, but she also was an MFA painter and found painting, was incredibly passionate about painting. But I think the idea that this is something that I love, but I don't want to make a living from doing it, I think that's a really interesting and important thing. I think a lot of people talked about that. I think we had a couple different guests who were painters, and they ended up not doing that as their main living. I think Matthew Robbins too, right? Wasn't he? So I think that's an interesting thing, knowing that you don't necessarily want to make a living from from something that you were doing. And then one thing I really identified with was Heidi when she was talking about flying a plane. Being running a business is like flying a plane and trying to fix the plane while you're flying it. My analogy was a bit more like riding in a car downhill and trying to figure out how to slow it down, because I feel like that's what I'm always trying to do is like, how do I slow this down so I can fix the things I need to fix and then get back to it. And then also with Tucker, when he was talking about if you end up where you started in a design, you didn't do design, you just did an exercise. And I think that's true. And I think it's even with the podcast, it's kind of like that. Like we didn't end up where we are now, isn't what we envisioned when we started. We're just kind of evolving it as we go.
Yes, I do. I do remember a couple of hours, many hours long jam sessions with you two talking about the show script and
Yeah. Oh, and
episode
stuff that makes you
20.
cringe now that we started
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
like what were we thinking? But yeah, what about you, Mel? What have you identified with from some of our guests on the show?
Well, a special guest for me was my boss and mentor from Martha, Stephen Earle. His episode was called "A Man Without a Plan," and it does resonate with me because you don't know what to expect when you first move to this city and how to get work. And some people say they don't have a plan, even though maybe art school is a plan. But afterward, you really have to be open to suggestion from others, and you have to take those opportunities and really listen to someone when they're, when they say, "Hey, I know a person who needs to hire someone to paint this thing," and he did that. He took what he could get. I think that, Eve Ashcraft has the same mindset. The one thing I love is a lot of our creatives are the kind of people of, creativity happens because mother of invention sort of thing. You can't afford something. You want to learn how to make it, or whatever the motivation is. And that really, you see yourself in a mirror a little bit with our guests. And I love that. I love the idea that you weren't alone in this whole thing, and that people were thinking the way you were thinking. And then even though everything's a little bit different, Matthew Robbins being a marine biologist before doing what he's doing, or Nancy Sariano being a dancer and ending up as a stylist and then an editor in chief of a magazine. Those journeys, the steps seem so big, but in actuality, they sort of are these steps that were really integral into who they are as creatives.
I think it's also you follow the path of what you're passionate about, and it kind of leads you to where you need to be. Like, I think that's the whole thing, is like being open to being led to where you need to be. Because as long as you're kind of in touch with what your goal in general is. I don't think it's like I want to be a this or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you have like a creative leaning and you just kind of keep following the things that you're interested in, I think you kind of end up where you need to be. And I feel
Yeah.
like everybody kind of said that in whatever way they said it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Mel, wasn't one of your first styling gigs styling underwear models on photo shoots?
Yes. The best job I ever had.
Best job ever.
I don't know why I left that gig. Yeah, and I learned a ton.
Yeah.
You just learn a ton. I became a stylist because they couldn't afford a stylist to do a shoot, and I was the art director, so I just stepped in. And it's that stepping in, stepping up, stepping in, learning something new is something that we all have. I mean, Marcie, you had to learn how to do ceramics and to make jewelry and to make all those things. Were those things that you were always curious about, or just like, hey, you know what? I think that. And how did you do it? Are you You're all self taught, pretty
Well, the
much.
ceramic, I did go to, when I was in school, I learned basic ceramics, but
Yeah.
you learn a certain amount of it and then you have to teach yourself. Like I now make my own clay and make my own glazes, which I did not learn in school because I didn't study ceramics. I had it as a studio, but I didn't study it as
Mm.
like a focus or a major or a concentration. It was literally one of the studios of several studios that I took. And I continued to work in it. But then, when I was working at Martha, a full-time job, I didn't make my own clay. I only had certain, I was a bit of a weekend warrior. So I would just do stuff on the weekends. And then, so it was simpler. But once I started as a business and you realize how expensive it is to buy clay and and also if you want to do certain things, like color your clay and different things, and you want certain glazes and certain finishes, you kind of you have more control if you can kind of control all the
Yeah.
elements of it.
Yeah. I mean, as you're getting into it about how you do what you do, it makes me think what's on the plan between now and, let's say, year end for each of you.
Well,
Each of us.
Marcie, you're going into a very busy season now.
Yes, part of the reason we're doing remote. Yeah, it's this time of year is really busy because one of the biggest challenges that I have as somebody who is a maker and a business, and I do a certain amount of wholesale, is managing having inventory for myself to sell, but also being able to make the inventory for other people. And right now is the time of year where everyone's kind of wants everything for holiday. So I'm just busy making everything for everybody, including myself. I wrote myself a wholesale order this year for the first time because last year, by the time December rolled around, I didn't have a whole lot of inventory. And I'm still kind of, honestly, that's something I'm kind of working on. If we want to get into like the whole business therapy thing, is trying to figure all of that out. Is you kind of want to understand what kind of business you want to have and what you want to be doing. Because this is like, for me, this was a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, I'm not sitting here saying, how can I make the most money? Which I
Yeah.
know is probably, I'm trying to think, how do I have creative control of and making the things I want to make and also making a living at it and trying to find the balance in all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I definitely haven't found the balance in it yet. And it kind of sometimes the business is doing better and sometimes the like balance of my personal life isn't doing as well. So I'm trying to figure all of that sort of stuff
Yeah.
out.
Not easy. Not
So,
especially when you're running the whole show.
so
You're the creator, the designer, the producer, the
the,
marketing person,
the
the
shipper,
accounting, the shipper.
I do have some help now. I have some help, but I'm
yeah.
doing and I'm trying to figure out where I can integrate help also, which is
Yeah,
also
yeah,
another
that's
aspect
great.
that's
What about
tricky.
shows? What upcoming shows are you going to be at and that sort of thing?
I'm doing the herb fair in September. It's September
Mhm.
20th.
Where's the herb fair?
It is, oh my gosh, I think it's at Caramore. It's in upstate. It's not quite upstate New York. It's kind of Westchester area, I
Okay,
think. And I'll put information. And I always, if you follow me on Instagram, I always post. I don't post very often, but I do post when I do those sorts of things.
okay,
So that's the only show I have till the end of the year that I know of. There may be two other ones, but we'll see what happens with that. But I'm going to try to rework my website because one of the other things I've been doing is I've been doing pre-orders and different things and going back and forth and trying to solve those problems that I was talking about. But my goal this year is to kind of stock a store, hopefully by like end of October and November, to have a good amount in there, and it also is me trying to rework my website a little bit to do that.
Great.
So
Not a small effort, but the products are gorgeous and amazing. And of course, they're seen on our show many times as our guests are drinking their tea or coffee out of Marcie's
Use this
amazing mugs. Mel, what about you? What is upcoming for you? What projects do you have going right now?
I have a bit of a, with the economy the way it is, and, obviously tariffs will affect products coming from all over the world, the, the security of those things landing here and shooting them. It's a little bit of a juggle for, I understand, for a lot of catalogs. So I was very thankful during COVID. I got a job from a friend to redesign a wine store called Berkeley Wines in Berkeley, California. North Berkeley Imports.
Yeah.
And it was great. For me, it was fantastic because it was sort of, I focused it during COVID, and I got to design it and choose the furniture and choose finishes and source antiques and artwork and things like that. So that company actually came now to Tribeca in New York, and they have a loft and they have a sales office here in New York. And they asked me to do it all over again. So I'm super excited about that because they're a fantastic company and a real autonomy in design. I take on what they ask for, but as far as the dream client, we talk about, several of our guests talk about the Matthew Robbins. We asked him about his dream client is people who let you do your job and trust you. And I think that I'm lucky enough to have this client, and hopefully there's more like that, which I hope to work on.
Yeah. What are some of the other, you mentioned catalog as a big part of your, let's say, bread and butter. What are the catalogs that you work with?
I work with Paragold, which is a high-end catalog, and
So that's online.
That's online, and I really enjoy working with them. The products are really high quality. They're names that from the D&D building, which is a design building. Big names, big fabrics, and sort of the names that designers use to do interior decorating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always fun because the product is so unique.
Yeah.
And I love working with them. I work with Garnet Hill on their bed linens. I work with a holiday company called Balsam, which does a lot of holiday. So it's a little bit of everything, which I really enjoy. And I think as you get older, working with nice people becomes so important. And I really enjoy the art directors and the collaboration that it all brings.
Yeah.
Initially, when we had talked about starting the podcast, we thought maybe there would be different ways. We ended up really liking this interviewing people, and it works really well. But initially, when Mel and I had talked about it, we were thinking about things like trying to demystify things for freelancers and people with creative careers. So if people have questions and things like that, or are looking for other answers, like we really want it to be a forum for people to be able to ask us if we can.
And it's also it's an invitation to non-creatives. I have several people that have sent me very nice emails and texts, some from high school, telling me that they listened to it. They really enjoyed listening about what these careers are. I've even gotten suggestions from people on there, like, would you ever consider interviewing? What was one? It was the sketch artists from courtrooms, and I was like, it's an interesting subject, only because they have to be so fast, or almost like a plein air painting, where they have to paint very, very quickly. And I said, if you know anybody, I'd love to talk to them. There's so much positive feedback. My nephew's very funny. I don't know if he's required to listen to it because he's my nephew, but he goes, I listen to it on the way to work. I don't know what half the things are being said, so I look them up, but I do listen to it. And I like that idea that someone's learning a little bit.
Maybe we could say something about the kind of, what's the ideal guest for our show in your minds as the show hosts. What are some of the what's the profile of a perfect guest for our show?
Marcie, do you want to go first?
I think, to me, it's someone that has a story is really important in term, and it doesn't. I don't necessarily, I think there's aspects of different creative careers, but I think if you're trying to switch from one thing to another, that's a really interesting story to me. Or, if you end up, I don't know how to, I guess I'm trying to figure
I
out.
agree with that. I
Like,
agree that the story, I think all the people that we've interviewed, the stories are very varied and interesting. Some are hilarious. Steven Johnson is
yeah,
a photographer and a friend. And what was interesting about his story for me was that he went into a career that was adjacent to what he did. He would go to he would be an art director at a photo shoot, directing a photographer, and then somewhere in the back of his head, he said, I really like what they're doing. I think I want to
yeah,
do that. And those adjacent careers within your industry, that's kind of interesting. I have people who have been stylist assistants or my assistants who become bed stylists.
Yeah.
And but just because they're on set looking at someone doing their job, or a producer, or a photo assistant.
What I've really appreciated from our guests is the honesty about the challenges that they faced and how they overcame those challenges. That for Steven Johnson, for example, he really kind of exposed what he had to do to get into being a commercial photographer. And so many things he didn't know that he had to learn, and how he actually made that happen and got his first sort of lucky breaks. There's so many life lessons that guests have been sharing that are really applicable beyond the creative community and just can be applied anywhere for anyone listening to the show. It's not easy navigating a career in any profession, whether creative or otherwise. And there's a lot of anxiety about change and trying new things. And these guests kind of show how they did that. And it hasn't been easy, it hasn't always been lucrative, but following your passion and also recognizing your talent and what you can bring, and growing that talent, all those things are really life lessons that anyone can take away from listening to the show, which is very
I think
cool.
there were two guests that sort of had passions that all their lives, and they've sort of made their careers go that way. Jodie Levine, certainly, with her childlike approach to her craft and what she did for a living. That's kind of interesting as well, to be able to grow something that you really, really do love.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how some people discovered their passions and followed them through into their career early in life, whereas others are like, what's a stylist, and learning what that even is in the VIP room of the Roxy, dance club in New York, and figuring it out as you go along in adulthood. So, all of these, I know journeys is not our favorite word, but journeys.
I know. We're always at FYI. We're always trying to find better words for the journey, path.
I don't mind path. Journey, I can't stand.
avoiding the memeable cliche.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got some exciting new episodes coming up too, so I feel like we did a little bit of like a retrospective, but we have a bunch of exciting interviews in the can as well. So
it's a great checkpoint, having more than 20 episodes out there and hitting this milestone of of downloads to the show. It's just a great moment to reflect on where we've come from and where we're at now. And yes, as Marcie says, we have some very interesting guests upcoming as we get into the fall season. So stay tuned, and we appreciate you.
Alive Creative is now on YouTube. Search Alive Creative on YouTube or head to youtube.com/Alive Creative Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any episodes.
Our producer is Chris Kangas. Our theme music was composed by Pierce McIntyre. And a special thanks to all the amazing people at East 10th House Studio.